Welcome to Ronin's Den. This is a special Sunday episode where we are viewing the comic sheet, the character sheet at comicbook.com's interview with Jeremy Crawford regarding the upcoming 2024 release of Dungeons and Dragons. New edition that's not an edition, but it's totally a new edition type thing, I guess. I'm not really sure.
Don't worry, folks. The video doesn't answer that question.
Yeah, that's one of the disappointing things about the video. But the character sheet did bring up some pretty good questions that we are going to dive in and take a look at. We're gonna pause the video here and there to talk about it. And yeah, let's get this started with the very first part of this question that came out, and that is the backwards compatibility part. Let's check this out real quick.
Compatibility. We've talked about backwards compatibility basically since this whole thing was announced. Now that I had a chance to read through the player's handbook, I was curious, how do older races, what now we call species, older species that aren't being brought forward, and subclasses that don't appear in the player's handbook, how will those work with the new class and character building rules?
So the classes, subclasses, feats, species, backgrounds, and all the rest that you have in the new player's handbook, you can use with any of similar elements that appear in other books, as long as it's not the same thing. And here's what I mean by that. If a subclass appears in the 2024 rules and you're making a 2024 character, you can't use the 2014 version of that subclass. Same with feats, same with species, any other element that basically, as soon as it appears in its new form, that new form replaces the old form. But what that also means is if something doesn't appear in the 2024 Player's Handbook, you are welcome to pair it with a thing that does. So a great example of this. If you are playing a 2024 wizard and you want to use the Necromancer subclass from the 2014 Player's Handbook, you are welcome to do so. Again, that is true of anything, not just from the 2014 Player's Handbook, but books like Xanathar's Guide, Tasha's Cauldron. If it's a feat, subclass, species, or other character element that does not appear in the 2024 Player's Handbook, you can use it with the material that does. But again, anything that appears in the 2024 Player's Handbook replaces its older equivalent.
Okay, so he goes on to keep talking talking in circles around that. That doesn't sound like backwards compatibility to me. That just it doesn't.
It doesn't make what?
It doesn't make any.
So what he
Go on.
So what he said is, if it appears in the 2024 stuff, you can't use the old stuff.
Right.
But if it doesn't appear in the 2024 stuff, you can use the 2014 stuff. But it's not compatible with the 2024 stuff. But it is compatible, but it's not. What?
Yeah.
What even?
It's, oh my God.
So is it?
Go on.
So if I want to use the Dragonborn from the 2014 book for the Ranger or whatever class, let's just say Ranger, in the 2024 book, I can't because there's a 2024 version of the Dragonborn.
Correct.
That's not backwards compatibility.
No, it's not. It's this weird sideways, it almost feels like software upgrade iterations, right? Like, oh, you're full, like you said, you're welcome to use the old stuff if we haven't made something new yet. Well, one, who's going to enforce this anyway? And where is this ever going to come into any kind of context where it makes a difference or any sense of necessity?
So Joe in our comments said, it sounds like he's answering for how it's going to be on Beyond starting day one, which makes sense because the minute these books come out, you aren't going to be able to purchase the 2014 books.
Oh yeah, no.
Like, you know that, right? But I don't know what he's even saying here.
Well,
So you've made a new edition.
no, he didn't make a new edition. He said what you can do is you can keep using all of your new stuff unless we put an update out that replaces the I'm sorry, you can use all your old stuff unless we put an update out that says you can't anymore because we updated that subclass or we added that species that didn't exist anymore. And honestly, the only place I find this ever coming into even the remotest possibility of being an enforced item is going to be at like Adventure League nights at your local game stores. It's not going to matter anywhere else at all. But
yeah,
I mean, but
no,
that brings
because
up an
who's really going to enforce it?
Well, and I mean, that brings up something interesting too. Let's say you make a character, and we'll just go with yours. You know, you make a Dragonborn, right? And you use the new 2024 stuff for your Dragonborn because they have Dragonborn in 2024. But you pick a Ranger subclass that doesn't exist in 2024 yet because nobody really liked it except for you. I don't know, the Ranger subclass of the Purple Monkey Dishwasher. So you're one of those. And so you're playing the new Dragonborn, the old Ranger subclass, and then like 3 years later, they come out with the new version of the PMD Ranger. So now your Ranger is going to get fundamentally changed during your Adventure League experience because that's the only time it's going to come into effect. So they're going to change your character, so you got to play the new version of it, which could drastically change how that character plays from the original one, because look at what they're talking about with the Paladin's Divine Smite changes. So,
but here's the other part that the part that we're not talking about. If it appears in the 2024 book, you can't use the 2014 book stuff.
Right.
So that means you can't use the 2014 classes at all. You have to use the new base class. And I can promise you right now that my in-person group, my buddy Blam, is not going to play the new Paladin because of the new Smite rules. I can promise you he will not play that class. So I'm going to have to let him play the 2020 or the 2014 version, even though this chucklehead is telling us we can't do that. But once again, who's going to enforce it? So it's not backwards compatible. You are making a new standard of the game.
And it's also not even a new edition at that point when you can mix and match things. I've been playing D&D since 2nd edition, and the change from 2nd to 3rd edition was drastic as far as mechanics and how everything went. You could not use anything from 2nd edition to 3rd edition. It was a real edition change. Same thing from 3rd edition to 4th edition, and 4th edition to 5th edition. Now, there was that 3rd and 3.5 change, and that's what this seems to be a lot closer to, is like the 3rd edition to 3.5 edition type thing. But in no way does that justify their new price tag that they're putting on this, which is $80 a pop, unless you pre-order the 3-book package with physical and PDFs off D&D Beyond, and then make sure you have your subscription for heroic or master level to get your dice and banners and backgrounds and character portraits, and this little gold dragon miniature for the virtual tabletop doesn't exist yet. But hey, $80 a book for an update that doesn't matter because you can just ignore it completely and continue to play the same current version of the game anyway. Like, there's a difference between ignoring an edition and playing the previous edition and ignoring, like, software updates that have an insane price tag on them.
Yeah, it's that price that is really what gets me, honestly. If the rumors that they're going to charge $80 a book... Joe just said in reality the only people who are going to really be impacted by this are the people that live on D&D Beyond, and that's true. I can't fathom this new price. $80 for a book that I just can't fathom that. I'm sorry. It just
No, it just it doesn't make any sense.
no. And then his answers aren't really clarifying it.
No.
And there are people that are questioning, like, now, did Wizards of the Coast lie to us about its backwards compatibility? Number one, why did you trust Wizards to tell you the truth to begin with?
Right.
Number two, I don't think they've lied, but they weren't fully honest based on this answer. So I don't know. It's a rough decision there. And once again, I'm going to say it just because they're going to be the people that are going to hate what we said. If you are okay paying that price and you like D&D and you want to go to this new product, do what you want. We're not telling you not to. We are just expressing our distaste and dislike of this new model that they're doing.
Right? Like, okay, so here's the thing. Like, I'm probably the more critical of the two of us when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards of the Coast, if we're going to be perfectly frank. Dungeons and Dragons was my very first tabletop role-playing game. It was my entire personality from, like, elementary school through, like, years after high school. Like, it was what I did every single weekend. I love D&D. If it wasn't for it, I never would have gotten into the TTRPG hobby. I want to continue to like it. But this guy makes it really hard to do so. And the company that he's heading with these non-changes and just greedy business practices. You know, I don't want to get into the controversy stuff on this video, but there's enough of that turned me off from the game.
Yeah.
It's just, no, like, I can't do it. I wish I could, but I can't anymore. And bringing up the D&D Beyond thing, let's jump over to that real quick, because there is this question of how he asked a good question, like, how is this going to affect D&D Beyond? So let's check that out real quick.
One of the things that has been talked about in regarding the 2024 Player's Handbook and the entire 2024 rules revision has been the role of D&D Beyond. And obviously the landscape has changed a lot in the last 10 years, and D&D Beyond is now a very big part of the Dungeons and what Wizards of the Coast does with Dungeons and Dragons. Did you create content with D&D Beyond in the back of your mind at all, or was this as independent as what you did in 2014?
That's a really good question, considering the speculation going around with how they're going to implement the new virtual tabletop, the digital purchases, and again, look at their sale model for
and potentially an AI dungeon master built into the tabletop. That's a really good question. I admire that question.
It's a good question. Now let's watch the response we get and the follow up.
With not really considering what role digital like digital compendiums, digital tools play within the rules themselves.
So we worked in consultation with our colleagues who work on D&D Beyond because we wanted to make sure that as the revised rules are implemented on D&D Beyond, that evolution of the game on D&D Beyond can be a fun and frictionless transition. But we also designed the books to stand on their own for traditional pen and paper play. So really, this is a case of both and.
What does that mean? Like, what does that even mean? Like, okay, so you want the books on D&D
I need a
Beyond?
Translator.
Yeah, like you want the books on D&D Beyond to work the same as the printed books? Like, and have the same information? Like, what? Anyway,
keep going. Keep going. I don't have an answer for what that meant.
What we did more than a decade ago when we built the 2014 core books, which was make sure the books work on their own feet. But then we had the advantage this time of also getting to talk to our colleagues on D&D Beyond and see, is there anything that we can do in the design that will really make traditional tabletop play as well as D&D Beyond assisted play both even richer. So to me, it was even better because we got to address both sides of that play experience.
We talked a little bit about.
Okay, so he never answered that question, and the wonderful person interviewing him didn't give him any pushback whatsoever on the fact that he dodged the question. I don't want to say dodge, but he just never really answered it.
Joe has a comment in our comment section
Okay.
that says, "My PR experience tells me he was told exactly what to say and these questions were vetted. You don't buy colleagues." That exactly sounds like what happened here. He knew exactly what he was going to say in this situation, and it was meant to not answer the question.
Yeah.
There was no answer there. That was a non-answer.
No. I mean, I would have accepted, well, we're looking at ways that we can update these books and turn them into living documents. So when there is a necessary change, we can go on D&D Beyond and make that change in real time. And then, that would be reflected in your purchase from D&D Beyond. And we'll make those edits also available in PDF format to be downloaded from our website. I would have accepted an answer like that because that would have given us some good information. He didn't give us anything.
Or the state, like you just said, but to put it in another way, we errata these books all the time. Having the ability to errata them in real time in a living document is far more beneficial than having to put out an errata book to everyone to be able to see what we screwed up, what we didn't screw up, what we meant, rules clarification. We can do it in real time. That would be an answer. Yeah. He didn't give anything. This was not an answer. That was just a, hey, this is blah, 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 blah. Let me talk and you'll just smile and wave and purchase our books because I'm Jeremy Crawford and this is D&D.
And this is something that honestly irritates the living hell out of me with the D&D community. They take answers like that, they eat it up, and they're like, that was a good response. Like, they have zero pushback on any of the just nonsense that WotC throws at them. They're just like, whatever, they said something. Like, words came out. We're good. We're good. Why aren't you? I'm not even bother with continuing the joke of, oh, the books in 2014 stood on their own. No, they didn't. They were so fucking vague that more people homebrew these things completely than play rules as written. There's an entire culture. Go on.
There's a whole what is it, Twitter post or something where it's the sage advice, which is literally just Jeremy Crawford answering thousands of questions about rules clarifications. They didn't stand on their own. He had to explain everything.
Constantly, because the rules were insanely vague. The homebrew section of D&D just took over. I mean, and there's even this nonsensical, loud, I don't even know if they're a majority part of the D&D community that views it as a badge of honor to purchase these books at their insane price point and then never use the rules written in them and side with their own homebrew because it's better. And you know what? Oftentimes the homebrew shit is better than what's printed in the book to begin with. Some of it's a little nutty and out of pocket, but
it is
a lot of it fixes the very real issues.
A lot of people use the fact that D&D 5e you can ignore a large chunk of the rules and still have a good time. They use that as if it's some good thing about the system. I personally don't think that's a good thing. I think that's kind of bad. I think that's bad design. I think that indicates that the system is flawed, but that you can ignore swaths of the rules. Granted, there are people that disagree with me on that, and that's cool. If you enjoy it, that's fun for you. But I typically play a game for the rule system, and I do like 5e. The rules are okay. It's a fun system to play, but there's so much they didn't really stand on their own. I don't care what he says there, but we could be a little wrong there.
No, I mean,
Joe, when gamers start pointing to Rule Zero 75% of the time, try a new game.
Right? Rule Zero is not game design, people. It's the absence of game design. It's the ultimate cop-out, and the fact that
Yes.
Dungeons and Dragons just took 5 minutes to put a little thing in their book stating that Rule Zero exists and you're free to use it. Guess what? You're free to use Rule Zero in any game that you want, but the game that you have should have rules that are going to support what you're trying to accomplish. And if they don't and they actively work against you, you're playing the wrong fucking game.
I think we're getting a little off
Anyway,
topic now.
let's
We should probably
continue.
reel it back to the video.
Yep. So this one, there's a bit in here about some major changes outside the classes. Well, let's take a quick look
I
at this.
think we can.
And then I want to
Okay.
see. Then I want to do the very last part, which is why does the 2024 even exist? Which, yeah, let's take a quick look at this.
Is there a particular rule, so far, as we're talking, the D&D, previews have mostly focused on class options. There was one big video at the very beginning that was like, massive hour-and-a-half long video. But outside of that, we've mostly talked about class rules options. Is there a particular non-class rule that really hasn't been touched on in the previews that you're excited for players to get their hands on?
So we have talked about in some of the interviews I've done, and by the way, we shot video for 3 days, and I don't actually know.
I'm sure he
when
shot
every
video for 3
single
days straight.
piece of that 3-day interview is coming out. But as a part of that, we've talked about the new tool rules, the new crafting rules, the fact that over 200 of the spells in the game have been significantly enhanced. And then our plan as we get closer to release is also to dig deeper into the rules glossary, because the rules glossary is filled with treasures that I think are going to make DMs and players' lives easier. For the first time in 5th edition's life, we now have sort of a unified rule for things like teleportation, for telepathy, for a number of common.
And he goes on to say stuff like that.
What does he mean by a common rule for teleportation?
Yeah.
It's a spell.
Yeah.
There's a common rule. There's look, what? Okay.
Yeah, here. Right?
Hazards
All in
that
all,
people
hold on.
face.
Here you go.
I'm really looking forward to how having all of that clearly presented in one place is going to improve life at the game table for people.
Okay, so again, he doesn't give us any answer on anything that he wants us to see other than the fact that there's some new rules around tools and crafting, which I don't know very many D&D tables that deal with crafting too much, to be completely honest. I mean, there might be, there definitely are them out there, but I haven't run into a lot of content of people asking for or talking about that in their games.
I mean, there are a lot of really good crafting systems out there already. I'm curious. There is a creator that I used to be mutuals with. His name or his handle on the DMs Guild is called Heavy Arms.
Mm-hmm.
And he put a bunch of supplements up about like alchemy and crafting. And I'm wondering, because the stuff you post on the DMs Guild isn't yours, it's theirs. I'm curious if maybe they stole some. I want to see that and see if maybe they stole that from him, because it's one of the highest rated things on the DMs Guild. I think it's like called the Heavy Arms Armorer's Kit or something. I have it. I'll look at later, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, he didn't really answer the question. Like you said, crafting rules, cool. Tools, what does that even mean? Like,
And that's a problem I have throughout this interview. And this isn't the only one of these interviews I watched with him. I watched the one with Ginny D. I watched the one with Diana. Crawford does a series of answers that are non-answers throughout all of them.
Yeah,
which is to
very
me,
much so.
And what irritates me the most is none of these people take 2 seconds to push back and go, "Hey, could I get a real answer?" Like, there's no follow up at all. It's just, okay, he spoke. I'm so happy I got Jeremy Crawford on my stream. My YouTube channel's going to grow because of this. Or I'm going to get views on TikTok because of this. Not, hey, I'm doing like the serious journalistic thing and actually going to press him for a real answer. It's, I don't know. That's me just being irritated. Anyway, what did Joe say there?
People working in this industry as influencers and reporters are wary to do that. It's new enough. I'd love to see Crawford get interviewed by Rascal. LOL. I don't know who Rascal is, but I wish it was people like us that would actually grill him and like try to push him into an actual answer, but they probably wouldn't go on to a show with people like us.
Oh, no. He would not go on a show with me. All right, let's look at the last pit here. This is the question is, why does 2024 exist? This is a question that's near and dear to my heart with this whole 0.5 update.
You took for some of these, when you're looking at updating them, was there like a specific thing that kind of drove those updates beyond just wanting to update them?
Yeah, so as we reviewed every aspect of the game, we were always looking for several things. One, could we make it more fun? Which often means if a thing kind of bogs play down, we'd look for ways, how can we make it more streamlined? Because usually that means the fun is going to go up. We also look for, has this piece of the game been a pain point for people in the last 10 years? And if so, how can we turn it into something that people are going to be happy to use? And we were also looking at the interoperability of all of the rules together. We, having the advantage of 10 years, not only of play and DMing, but also working on the game, this was our chance to see how we could make all the different parts of the game work even better together. So a number of these changes in base rules are not just about making the base rule better, but it's also about also benefiting classes, feats, species, magic items that rely on that element. And so there can really be this multiplicative effect. Here's a great example of that. You mentioned grappling, and one of the ways now that you can grapple is as a part of the redesigned unarmed strike. We wanted to make that sort of unarmed strike package a really easy to use and versatile game option for everybody. But we also specifically had characters like the monk in mind, because we have the monk in particular, but occasionally we'll have other effects that will allow you to throw an unarmed strike into your combat mix. And we wanted to make that more tactically interesting so that you don't just have to clobber somebody. You also could instead grab them or shove them. And so that means every monk that before, when a feature was telling them they could make an unarmed strike, before their only option for that extra unarmed strike was to deal damage. Now, every single one of those things is now an option to deal damage, grapple, or shove. And so just that alone is a great example of that sort of multiplicative
things that DMs homebrewed into their game long ago anyway. Okay, and that is that is the interview that he did. And again, he answered nothing there. Why does 2024 exist? Words. We looked at the game. We wanted to streamline stuff. We wanted to do this other thing. No descriptions on how that was done.
We have... let me translate this for you, Eric. Hey, we have... How old is D&D Beyond? Let's say 5 years. I don't remember how old it is. We have 5 years of homebrew data from D&D Beyond that we can steal from and make another book that people will buy. because it's been 10 years and people will buy no matter what we put out because that's just how they work.
Yeah, it's just, oh my God. Like, and especially right now, right? Like, we have 3 games coming out, like, back to back. Well, not even 3, not coming out back to back. We have 5th edition, which it sounds like from this interview isn't going anywhere. It's 100% completely relevant still, because you could still use all of this stuff unless you're playing an Adventures League, and then the game master gets the new book and then wants to update you to force you to play the new version of the thing that you've been playing anyway, because it totally works with the current material. And then you have Tales of the Valiant, which, you know, so politely told you when you asked them what's different about it and why you should buy it. Well, maybe you shouldn't buy it, that you don't have to. And then you have this system coming out, which is what I just said before. Like, you can use it or not because the old stuff still works, and you can mix it with the new stuff, except for when you can't because we put out the new stuff and you're playing an Adventures League and the GM bought the new book. Like, I don't, man, just tell me, like, yeah, we took 10 years worth of information. We heard what you said about the subclasses. These, like the Ranger, we heard you. It sucks. Nobody likes the Ranger. So we did all these cool things to make it more desirable to play. Here's a list of the things we did to make the Ranger badass now. Would you like to try it out? No.
Oh, or, hey, we listened to everything you said. We put it in a book and slapped an $80 price tag on it when it should have been like a $5 update.
I'll take that even at this point. Like, just
like, but you hit it right on the head there. We have 5e. Tales of the Valiant from Kobold Press, and I'm not going to go deep into that, but they put out a book, Tales of the Valiant. I asked, okay, you say it's 5e compatible. Why should I purchase this book? Well, if you don't want to buy it, you don't have to. Okay, then I'm definitely not going to buy it now. And then I looked at those books. I've got them. I was given them by somebody else who's like, hey, I want you to see it and actually get an idea of it before you knock it. I looked through the player's handbook. It's 5th edition. Some of the classes are a little different. They updated a few things. They did some like quality of life updates. It's still 5th edition. It's exactly what it is. And then we're getting this D&D 2024 book. It's 5th edition, but it's exactly like Tales of the Valiant. You can use the 5e stuff with it, and it's not going to do anything. What is the purpose of these books? Why do we need this? Especially at an $80 price tag, if the rumors are true that it is going to actually be $80 after all the pre-order stuff, which we don't have an actual confirmation of that yet, but most people are saying it's going to be an $80 book. Well, I don't think it's worth $80.
No, and that's going by the backwards math of $169 plus $60 on the pre-order bonus if you don't get it with that. So
yeah,
that's how they're mathing that out. And I mean, mathematically, it checks out $80 a pop. But no, I mean, and the thing is, like, nobody has to buy these books. Nobody has to go out and buy the new edition when it comes out, except for maybe professional game masters, which are their own little thing that we can talk about in another video. Like, nobody has to go out and change editions ever. And I hate edition wars based on, I don't like this change they made to the Paladin. Divine Smite isn't just free anymore. Like, that's a dumb gripe to have. Like, an edition's supposed to change the way the game is played, so changes like that are to be expected. But
the problem is they're not touting this as a new edition.
Exactly.
That's the issue.
That's my issue.
If this was a new edition, if this was 6e, hey, we are making a new edition of the game, and all these rules came out, absolutely, that's cool. I understand. But you are touting it as 5th edition compatible. That's where the issue I'm having comes from.
Yeah.
Why, especially like I said with the price tag, it's not, to me, it's not acceptable.
No.
Something is off here.
If this was like a $20 PDF, and even then I wouldn't be happy about it, but I'd be a lot more understanding, and I wouldn't be saying nearly as much stuff about it as I am. You know?
Yeah.
If they want to, if it's just, you know, like the revised core rulebook. Like it comes out and it's the same price, which basically it is. But you don't tout it as something new, like kind of like do what Dungeons and Dragons did back in like 2nd edition with the 2.5 updates that they did. Fine. But we're coming out with a new edition. And it's not. It's just not.
Well, I think what they want, what the reason they're doing it the way they're doing it is because they don't want another incident like 4th edition. When they moved from 3.5 to 4th edition, the system, like they made a bunch of money on 4th edition. Don't let the revisionist people tell you they didn't make money.
No,
but they didn't
successful.
make near the money they made. It was successful. It just wasn't extremely successful. I think they were worried that if they put out a whole new edition, they're going to go through that again where people are just going to combat it and say, no. Especially when Tales of the Valiant, which is 5e compatible, came out, people would switch to that like they did from 3.5 to Pathfinder instead of 4th edition, which if Tales of the Valiant had just said, hey, D&D is coming out with a new edition, we want to remain the 5e option, I would have accepted that answer. That would have been at least honest.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's it. And I think that's the reason they're touting this as 5th edition when it's not. It's clearly not. They're clearly trying to move away, but they don't want to just jump in the deep end. They want people to dip their toe, get in, feel it out, and be like, okay, this water's a little nice. Then waddle down and be like, okay, I'm a little deeper, oh, this is nice.
Honestly, you know what I feel like it is? To be completely 100% honest, it is the D&D. It's their way to monetize D&D Beyond, because we've heard him say before they want to monetize this game like a video game, and they're using the ability to have D&D Beyond be able to take books off the marketplace and force all new purchases to go to the new version, and then go with the video game delisting strategy that's happened in the past with so many other games that forces current owners to go ahead and make the new purchase. If people say, oh, you can't do that, Marvel Ultimate Alliance is no longer available on the Xbox store, even if you purchased it digitally. You can't buy that. You can't get the game ever again. They've already removed Volos and Mordekians off the digital marketplace. If you own them, you can still download them for now. But you don't even get the PDF.
But who knows how long?
Yeah, but you don't even get the PDF to your computer. So they could delist that at any point in time. And what's the solution? Buy the new $60, $70, $80 book with PDF, or just buy the PDF off D&D Beyond to get the new version of it. And that's going to be the player's handbook. In my opinion, at some point in time, they're going to delist the 2014 version of D&D 5th edition on D&D Beyond, and at some point in the future, they're going to pull the ability for you to even view that document anymore. Because you know why? It's no longer what they're using. They said it yourself. You're welcome to use the old stuff until we come out with the new. Once the new comes out, remove the old, and then the only option is the new. And if you don't have the new, you got to purchase it. That's my prediction.
So
that's where I'm going to close myself out for tonight.
So I just want to bring up one final little note of all these interviews I've seen with Jeremy Crawford. And this is one that I think I'm surprised no one has asked yet. Do these new books fall under the OGL? I don't know if they're going to fall under the OGL. I don't think it's been announced. And, they're tried to do away with the OGL. Maybe they'll try it again. You never know. That's it. That's all I have to say on it. I just think, like you said, the question probably got rejected, according to Joe. I'm skeptical of this whole thing. It smells fishy. I'm anxious to see how it plays out, but for me, I think I'm just going to keep playing other systems.
Yeah, I would I would look up to see what they're going to do with it, but honestly, I won't believe it until the game is launched anyway, and we have the exact thing in our hand as to how they're doing that with the OGL or not. So,
yep, I agree.
Because they can say anything till release.
But
anyway. Why don't you
Yeah.
close us out?
Anyway, this has been Eric and Steve, the hosts, co-host and host of the Ronin's Den podcast. We are glad that you watched. Those are our thoughts on the Jeremy Crawford interview, or the non-interview, because he really didn't answer any questions. If you liked what you saw, you want to support the channel, please like and subscribe. It means the world to us and helps us grow. We're trying to advance the channel and get a few more things going. Last Saturday of every month, we do a monthly one-shot all this year. We're not sure what we're going to do next year, but we have 5 more months to figure that out. Also, we do interviews with TTRPG creators and games. If you have a game that you've created and you want to have it on the channel, please reach out to me at _dragon_x on TikTok, or message in the comments here, and we will get back to you as quickly as possible. Anyway, thank you for watching. You have a wonderful night. Goodbye.
Take care.